When LaTaunya Howard founded Howard Corporation Center, LLC in 2012, she was looking to provide a flexible workspace for small businesses and entrepreneurs to work while maintaining a professional image and keeping their overhead low. Such a solution would allow businesses the opportunity to invest more of their time and money into the growth of their business instead of the nuances of managing an office. After 6 years, Howard has supported hundreds of entrepreneurs and recently expanded her reach by self-publishing the Amazon best-selling book entitled Kill the Rent, Grow Your Biz. The book outlines the professional and financial benefits of working in a shared office space and how it can positively affect business growth. She also recently began volunteering as the host of C-Suite on Your Street. That's S-U-I-T-E, on Your Street, a business-oriented television show that she created and produces with Laurel TV. The show's premise is to share information and resources to help small businesses operate like a C-suite executive, wherever they are on their entrepreneurial journey, and to provide unexpected tips and resources that entrepreneurs might not have considered relevant. And speaking of her passion about helping entrepreneurs, Howard said, "I really enjoy working with businesses and collaboration with entrepreneurship brings. Her experience as Flexible Workspaces has allowed her to work with a diverse clientele and has continued to kindle her passion for helping others." LaTaunya Howard is the founder and managing member of Howard Corporate Center, LLC, which is centrally located in the Washington-Baltimore area. Howard Corporate Center, LLC provides a flexible workspace for small businesses and entrepreneurs to be able to maintain a highly professional appearance without breaking their budget. Howard is also the TV host, as I said, of C-Suite on Your Street on Laurel TV, which provides information and resources to help entrepreneurs along their journey. She encourages volunteerism and was named Volunteer of the Year by Hands On Greater DC Cares Volunteer in 2012. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Reading Circle microphones, LaTaunya Howard. LaTaunya, good morning.
Good morning to you and your listeners. How are you?
We are wonderful, thanks. Like I told you, it's always great whenever the guest calls in. And since you're in media, now I understand why you called in early, because you know.
Well, that could just be the type A in me as well, but we'll just say it's because of the media, just to be nice.
Well, either way, it works. And interestingly enough, I had a guest a couple of weeks ago. Now, see, this is the thing, because the show is early morning East Coast time, and my guests are calling from all around the world, literally. I had about a month ago, I had a guest calling in from Bali, I think, India, somewhere in India. And then a couple of weeks ago, I had someone calling in from the Illinois or the Arkansas area, somewhere around there. But anyway, they were on a different time. And sometimes it's confused and that's why I always make it very big whenever I send out the correspondence, Eastern time. But every now and again, folks get confused and they think I'm talking about whatever time zone they're in. So they'll call in on their time zone. So in this particular instance, a couple of weeks ago, it was Central Time. They're an hour behind. So I said 7 o'clock a.m. The caller called in at 8 a.m. my time, which was 7 a.m. their time. So wow. I'm sitting there thinking, well, I guess the guest is not going to show this morning. And luckily, I didn't shut down equipment and everything. I kept everything going until, when I'm off the air at 9 and the person called in at 8 o'clock my time. And I'm kind of like, okay, I said, I understand what happened. So when folks call in early, I'm good with that. I don't have no problem with that at all.
Very good.
So, all right. Now, this is interesting in terms of the business that you started. And I know my wife is definitely going to be interested. She's in Germany right now, or Italy or somewhere, where she took some kids overseas on a field trip. And she's coming back tomorrow. So I know she's going to want to hear the archive of this because she just got her MBA in entrepreneurship. That was her focus. So this one she's definitely going to want to hear whenever she gets back and whenever I run the tape back for her. Well, digital, whatever they call it. I don't call it tapes anymore. Whatever it is. But
I know exactly what you mean. That's okay.
But when she gets a chance to listen to this one. But we're talking entrepreneurship, and then you're talking about the whole workspace. That's really a niche area. So let's talk a little bit about how you got into that, and then the whole notion of writing the book, Kill the Rent, Grow Your Biz. So, entrepreneurship, is that something you were always interested in, or are you interested in starting your own small business, or where'd that come from?
Well, I like to say that I am a bit of an accidental entrepreneur, and that it isn't something that I set out to do when I was growing up. Like many people in my generation and before, the mindset and the way that we planned our future was by going to school, getting a job, working your way up the ladder, and then eventually retiring. And that's, for many years, that's the path that I was on. So my first accidental entrepreneurial endeavor began actually as a result of me applying for another position where I was a W-2 employee, and I wound up not getting that job. But the interview panel was so impressed with me that they offered me the opportunity to come back and work as a contractor on a project. Now, of course, at that time, having been a W-2 employee for so many years, I didn't know anything about 1099 and sole proprietorship versus an LLC, but I quickly learned, and thank goodness for having a great accountant who I still work with today. So that was my first entrepreneurial endeavor. I worked as a 1099 sole proprietor employee, or a contractor rather, on that particular project, which lasted for a year. And this was back in 2000 when this particular contract began. It was a year-long contract. It was up for renewal, but because of September 11th, which of course we all know happened in September of 2001, the contract wasn't renewed because of all of the financial uncertainty that followed. So shortly thereafter, I re-entered the W-2 world. And speaking of which, my formal training, if you will, is in public administration, specifically financial management in the governmental arena. So that's what I did for many years before becoming an entrepreneur. So after that first endeavor ended, I went back into the workforce. I continued to do financial consulting on the side, because I really enjoyed the autonomy that being a contractor gave me. So I didn't give it up completely, even though I went back into the workforce. After another few years in the workforce, my second accidental entrepreneurial endeavor was a result of the position I was in, which was very challenging. It's one that I really enjoyed, learned a lot of important skills from. But like many organizations, there were things going on that shouldn't have been going on. So without getting too far into that position ended. And I ultimately went back into the entrepreneurial role. I did some soul searching to figure out what it is I really wanted to do, because although my first endeavor as a financial consultant was one that I was able to generate income from, it didn't really feed my soul. And at that point in my life, after my second entrepreneurial endeavor, it was important to me to do something that truly fed my soul, not just be able to generate income from, right, but something that I was passionate about. You understand what I mean, right? Because it's one thing to make money, but it's another thing to feed your soul and to fuel your passion.
I understand it more than you know, because I made a career move back in 2000 as well, from corporate to education. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
I mean, that's just something, it's hard to describe, but it's a whole different experience when you're generating income doing something that you love versus generating income just so you can pay the bills and have certain comforts in life. There's another dimension to living in life, I believe, when you're truly passionate about what you do and when you're helping other people succeed in whatever their goals are. And certainly education enables you to do that, I'm sure.
No, that's absolutely right. And you're right. It is very hard to help others understand whenever you make a move or a shift like that seems to them odd. But like you said, in trying to help folks understand, like you just said, getting the money. I mean, I know when I was in corporate, the perks were great. I was traveling. I was meeting celebrities. I was doing all kinds of promotions. I mean, it was the perks and the money was great. But like you said, it wasn't feeding the spirit, wasn't feeding the soul. And so when I left there, I actually took a 50% pay cut to go teach, and people thought I had lost my mind. They really did. And so I know.
You found your mind. That's what happened. That's what really happened. That's what people don't always understand. But yeah, so that's really some of the thought processes that went into my second entrepreneurial endeavor, which is Howard Corporate Center, as you mentioned. And as I was going through that due diligence, if you will, of trying to crystallize what the next business model was going to be, I considered some of the passions that I did have, things that came to me naturally. One, I've always enjoyed business to business, even in a governmental environment, which I mentioned was my formal background. There's still a bit of B2B, business to business, or at least business to consumer to some extent, because there are a number of, governmental partnerships with private organizations. So I enjoyed opportunities to be involved, even as a governmental employee, with private organizations, whether it was as contractors or some other type of capacity. So I enjoyed doing that. I definitely enjoy helping other people succeed, which service office space enables me to do, because it allows my clients to reduce their overhead and instead use that money to reinvest in their business through marketing or whatever the case may be. I've always had an interest in interior design. I've never done anything with it professionally, but I've always had a knack for it, if you will. And being the owner of a service office space allows me to even tap into that, because you have to build out your spaces to suit whatever your particular clientele needs. So looking at all of these things together, service office space was an excellent fit. I opened the business in 2012. I just had my 6-year anniversary, and as they say, the rest is history. I really enjoy it. I enjoy seeing my customers succeed. I have a very diverse clientele: startups, freelancers, governmental entities are clients of mine. I just became a subcontractor to a federal prime contractor, so it's a wonderful opportunity to help people across a whole spectrum of industries.
So how do you, all right, first off, is that, while you were talking, so many questions popped up, because I don't work off a question sheet. My questions come from the conversation. And so many of them popped up as I was listening to you, in terms of, one, how difficult, or was it difficult for you to make that shift from working for someone to being your own boss? And I see you kind of went in and out of that back and forth. How difficult was that to make that transition? Because I'm sure there's somebody in the listening audience who is teeter-tottering on, what, do I keep working for somebody, or do I build my own dream?
I think because I had that first experience where the opportunity came to me as a result of not getting a W-2 position, that was relatively easy, because I was just excited for it to be something new. And it's not an opportunity that I necessarily created. It was presented to me, so it made it easy for that particular endeavor. The second one was a little bit more difficult, partly because of the circumstances around which it happened. But I would have to say, if I didn't have that first entrepreneurial experience and I didn't already have that mindset going, because as I mentioned, I kept doing that on the side, even when I went back into the workforce after 2001, it made it that much more easier for me. So my situation is a little bit different than many people. But I think that for most people, many people I've talked about, and to some extent, even my case, there comes a point where you just get tired of the same old. I mean, it's your gut that tells you. It's not necessarily logic. Something in your intuition, your spirit is telling you to get out.
You're absolutely right. No, you get to that point where you say enough is enough. That's exactly right.
Exactly.
And so when you start getting into, like I said earlier when I was introducing you, in terms of flexible workspace or that whole area, that's very targeted, very focused, a very niche industry. How did you come upon that? How did you take that from like a concept in your head to actuality? Or is that something like a franchise opportunity where you were able to franchise it? Where did that concept come from for you?
I'm so glad that you asked that, because it actually came as a result of the gap between when I left my last job right before my second entrepreneurial opportunity and when I actually started this business. So when I had that situation with the one job that, just for to keep things simple, it just wasn't working. I went back to doing financial consulting full time. Remember, I was doing it part time while
Correct.
I was W-2, but right after that, I went back to starting to do it full time. And I was working out of my home, which is what a lot of small business owners do, particularly startups. They have
Right.
a spare room in their home, and they just set up their shop there. And speaking of just getting tired, there was one day I was working out of my home, and I just got tired of being in the house all the time. I started to get cabin fever. Even though I was working, I just got tired of the scene. You know, again, that intuition, there's something inside of you that just tells you, look, you need to do something different because this is not working.
Right.
So when I had that message, I don't know what led me to do it, but for some reason I just got on the internet and started looking for office space. I think at the time I was looking for something, maybe a very small office that I could rent, take a primary lease out on. But during that search, I actually learned of a service office space that wasn't far from where I lived. And that was the first time I had learned about it. This was probably about 2009 or so, was the first time that I learned about service office space, which came out of the frustration of me working out of my home and feeling so isolated and having the same scene day in and day out. So that was actually the first time I learned about service office space when I began using it as a client, myself as a client for my small business that I had at the time. So even though the service office space industry had been around for decades by the time I learned about it in 2009, it was still very novel for me, just as it is still very novel for some people today, as you alluded to. So that was my first experience with it. And then a few years later, when I was crystallizing what I wanted my next business model to be, I considered what my interests were that I mentioned earlier, working with businesses. I enjoy helping other business owners succeed, and even my interest in interior design. I decided that service office space would be a perfect fit as far as a business model, not only for the opportunity that it fills in the marketplace, because there's always going to be a need for it on some level, but it just taps into many of my natural interests and capabilities. So that was how it began to crystallize. And as far as actually starting up the model, I would say God just blessed me. He led me to a location where the timing was just perfect. The landlord was willing to work with me in terms of initial terms of the lease. The location is in a wonderful central location, which I didn't know about when I first started. So I've always said that God opened the doors to the location now. Like I said, I opened in 2012. In 2015, I expanded to an adjacent space, so I doubled my capacity within 3 years. I'm at a point now where I'm ready to expand again because, you know, business is going pretty well, and there's just such a demand for it. So I'm looking forward to that next step. But that's really how the story came together for me in terms of this. So in terms
of, for those of us who are not really familiar with the concept, how does it work? Now, somebody's an entrepreneur or a corporation or a business or whatever, and maybe someone like you who are just tired of being in the home setting now wants to kind of do something a little different. How does the whole thing work? What is the concept of the whole notion of the flexible workspace?
Sure. Well, one of the things I say in the book is that many small business owners fake it. And I faked it too. And what I say by faking it is because office rent, commercial office rent is high. It's very expensive. Right. And for many businesses, regardless of size, rent tends to be the largest non-payroll expense that you have in your budget. So what many people do, not just small businesses, but I'll focus on small businesses, what they do is they feel they can bypass paying rent by faking it. And what I mean is they fake it by working out of their home office like I did. I faked it too. Or they may work out of a coffee shop because they don't want to pay that expensive office rent, which could be minimally $1,000 a month for a very small space.
Right.
So the way service office space works is that it enables you to have a professional place to conduct business in a corporate environment, a furnished office, a furnished meeting room, a furnished conference room for a fraction of the cost of what a traditional commercial office will cost you. You can rent a private office for as little as maybe $25 an hour, depending upon what the demand is in your market. And with that $25 for an hour, you'll have a desk, you'll have guest seating, you'll have internet access, you'll have a receptionist who can meet and greet your guests and direct them to you. You'll have everything that you would have in a quote-unquote real office at a significantly reduced cost than if you were to take on a lease yourself. And this is important for business owners to know because in my experience, I come across people every day who don't even know that this is an option for them. And it's important for people to consider this as an option, I believe, because you never know how people are perceiving you when you ask them to come to your home for a meeting or come to the neighborhood coffee shop for a meeting. They may not take you seriously.
Correct.
And you don't know the deals you may potentially lose simply because of where you're working. And that's the reality of things. So you can overcome that negative perception and still not break the bank and have a professional environment to conduct your business and meet with prospects and clients by using service office space.
So that is something, the service office space is shared, that the cost, if you will, is shared amongst many for the most part. In terms of, like you say, using the example of $25 an hour, do you plan those hours in advance, or is it something where, you know what, I'm going to need it today, I walk in there and I give you my $25 for the hour? How does that whole thing work?
I would say that will vary from provider to provider in terms of how flexible that they are with how folks can access their services. But I will say with Howard Corporate Center, we're very flexible in terms of how you can access our space and how much you spend as well. We have what we call a la carte options. So in that case, you can use the space on an as-needed basis. You don't need to sign an agreement or sign up for a minimum term. Using the example that you just gave, if a person just says, you know, they have an impromptu meeting and they want to meet in a professional environment, they can call me up and say, LaTaunya, I'd like to reserve a space on this day at this time. Do you have anything available? I say yes, and then the reservation is confirmed. We also have what we call workspace packages, which are part of our virtual offices. And virtual offices are effectively anything that's not a full-time office, but still gives the impression of having an office. With our workspace packages, a client can purchase a bundle of hours per month, let's say 8 hours per month. And with that 8 hours per month, they can use any space that they so desire, to many, in some cases, at any time of day that they want, depending upon if they have after hours access or not. And then that saves them some money versus the a la carte version. But nonetheless, they have two different ways that they can access our space, the a la carte on an as-needed basis or as part of a virtual office, which will save them additional money.
And the setup, it's you're not talking a cubicle here. You're not talking a cubicle. You're talking about a space that actually looks like it was your office.
It actually is an office. The mid-size of our offices are about 12 by 10, 120 square feet roughly. All of our spaces are on the perimeter of the building, so you have a window and natural light. And you have a desk, you have chairs, you have filing. And what some people do is they even put some of their certificates up to make it more customizable for their particular business when they are meeting with prospects and clients. So this is a real office with a real door, with four walls, and with privacy and professionalism.
And so you said you had an interest in design. So do you actually kind of design the areas of the offices?
I did with the space that I'm in now. The space that I began the business in 2012 and that I expanded into a few years ago was built out mostly already when I took on the lease. But there were some interior touches that I did add to the space to customize it a little bit more to my taste. And that it enabled me to tap into that architectural design that I have. But when I go into the next space, or at some point, I might have a space that's actually a shell that's raw, and I will have a little bit more creativity in terms of how the space is built out, in terms of where walls go, what the carpeting color is, and things of that nature. So I did a little bit to a certain extent with the space that I'm in now, but certainly there's more opportunity if someone has an interest themselves to have more of a footprint in terms of how the space is ultimately built out.
Now, with entrepreneurship comes risk. And so anytime you're kind of launching out, into your own thing, there's always the risk of it making it or not making it. So where did you kind of, did you scope out that market? Because I would think, based on, like you said, especially in the area that you're in, I'm in the New York area, in those areas, the rents are astronomical. And so I would think when you were doing your research, your market research kind of led you into why you went into that area. And I laugh whenever we talk about this, because I remember years ago when I was in corporate, I was in a group where we were new business development, and we were actually, this is going back years now, where we were, and a lot of the things that have come to pass in terms of gadgets and technology that's out were things that when I was in that group, we were actually fantasizing about. And we had this thing that to all the people around the country and around the world who were submitting concepts to us, it was called the Concept Library. And people around the world really thought this was like this big building. And the truth of the matter is the Concept Library was a file cabinet. And so we always would get the biggest kick out of, you make sure you send it to the Concept Library, put the address, so forth and so on. And we'd get the biggest kick that the Concept Library was a file cabinet. And that's why it's kind of like when I heard you say something about fake it, I had to laugh.
Because it really across many industries, right? So.
But like I was saying a couple of minutes ago, in terms of what rents are and leases and everything, you're right. In terms of if you really, especially if you're a startup, if you've gotten to that AT&T or that Disney level or something like that, that's one thing. It's another thing if you're starting up your business and you're trying to get going. And like you said, folks may not want to go to the coffee shop to try to present themselves, as the Concept Library.
Exactly. There you go. Because people will eventually catch on to it, right?
That's right. So, but again, that's okay. This is 2018. You started into that is definitely kind of like this time frame type of concept. It's like kind of like a modern type concept or thinking out of the box, if you will. And like you said, it's been around a long time.
Right. And, now in society, we're very much a sharing economy.
Right.
So, so even though, service office space has been around, I think, 40 years or perhaps even longer, it may seem, and maybe it's true that it's picking up more nowadays or it's becoming more popular nowadays. There are some really big co-working and executive suite type organizations out there. And co-working and executive suites are two categories of service office space that I talk about in my book, but it seems like it's becoming more prevalent now, and that may be because of the shift in how people are relating to things. We've become more of a sharing economy.
Right.
And I was speaking to someone recently. Some of that, I think, was the result of the real estate boom a few years ago, back in 2008, 2009, when a lot of people lost their homes and businesses and so forth. And I think that forced people to think a little bit differently about how they spend their money and where they invest their dollars. So you don't see this sharing economy only in workspace, which service office space is an example of, but even in terms of how we shop, even in terms of ride sharing types of opportunities. People don't necessarily want to have a car if they don't need one. They can just catch one of these ride sharing companies that are out there. People don't want to spend money to go to a mall anymore. They shop online. So habits are just changing, and I think service office space is very much in line with that.
That's a very good point in terms of habit shifts. And I know even in marketing, a lot of what we're saying in marketing now is you better make sure that you're creating an experience for people. Like, it's not just a matter of, showing the product, this, that, and the other. You have to be able to appeal of what the experience is going to be. And that's a shift. And even the way we go about work and school and everything is a shift, because my daughter, who lives down in your area, she's in the Alexandria area. She works for a big consulting firm and does a lot of government work, and most of her work is remote. I tease her like, wait a minute, you get a chance for work from home? You can work from wherever you are in the country? And she's like, yeah, I don't have to go into the office. It's like she does everything she needs to do as long as she has her laptop or a computer or a device with her. She can do it wherever she is. So even that has changed, the work from home. And that was kind of starting back in the 80s and 90s, but it is a lot more prevalent as well. And I saw something on the other day. I was reading an article that even as we're going further and further in, how we do education is going to shift. It may not be a need for a kid to come to school.
That's absolutely correct.
So
that's right.
So yeah,
And I was going to say, like you, I'm an educator as well. I've been teaching at a university for about 6 years. I actually began teaching around the same time that I opened up my business. And you may have already seen this in your educational experience, that many classes right now at the college level, and I think even prior to college, can be taught online.
Oh, yeah, because you're absolutely right. Because even in my experience as a teacher, last semester before last, I taught the course in the classroom. This year, when I got this fall coming up, when I got the assignment, they said, you'll be teaching the class online.
Right. Absolutely. So things have definitely shifted, and that's something that, as we've been talking about, applies also to service office space. So hopefully that's a relief for some of your listeners who are thinking about starting a business, but as you were speaking to before, are a little unclear about how to proceed considering the risk, because in the first few years, a business has a greater chance of failing than succeeding. We all know the statistics. And there are a lot of growing pains that come along with starting a business. There are mistakes that you're going to make. There are some mistakes are not going to be expensive. Some are going to be expensive. So there certainly are a number of risks that come along with starting a business. One of the things that I enjoy so much about service office space is that it helps to mitigate that risk to some extent by enabling you to significantly reduce your overhead. So I certainly take on a risk every time I sign a new lease agreement, because things can always change in the marketplace, but that's not a risk that my clients need to concern themselves with. So if you're contemplating, or if any of your listeners are contemplating starting a business, find some solace and comfort in knowing that service office space can help to mitigate some of the risk in terms of the outlay of a professional place to work. It allows you to do so. You can add credibility to your business. I have found that many startups and small businesses think that because they're small or because they're a startup, they're working out of a coffee shop is an excuse. That kind of gives them a pass.
Right.
But you can work in a professional environment with four walls and a door and still be able to mitigate some of the risk that comes along with being a business owner.
So now this is my 18th. I've just entered my 18th season of being on air here, and I've interviewed countless authors, and you would not believe how many times I've had a guest on that said they were not an author. And I said, but you have a book. So what do you mean you're not an author? It's like, but you have a book. Now, when I'm going, a lot of times I think what people were trying to say was they had no idea that they would be an author. I kind of think that's what they were trying. And so it's leading me to my next question, because you started your business, and now I'm looking at how your bio reads in terms of expanding your reach. Talk to me a little bit about, in terms of now that you've decided to write a book, what was that like for you? What process did you go through for that?
I really enjoyed the writing process more than I thought I would. It's one of those things where once I actually got into the groove of things and I knew the direction I wanted the book to go, the words almost just flowed out of me, which was a really good experience. But just to tell you about why I decided to write the book, as we've been talking about, I've owned a service office-based business for about 6 years. And during that 6-year period, even up until recently, I'm constantly coming across people who simply don't know about service office space, even though it's been around for decades. So I decided to write the book as a way to close that knowledge gap. I come from a school of thought where if you see a problem in the marketplace, then offer a solution to it.
Correct.
So the book was my way of being the solution to the knowledge gap that I observed in the marketplace, people just not knowing about what service office space is. And in the book, I provide a little bit of background about the problem that service office space solves for business owners, specifically the money dilemma, meaning that many small business owners are just going to be strapped for cash because it's a bit of a conundrum when you're trying to get money from the bank, for example. Many banks attest that they want to support business owners and new businesses, but you need to be in business for a certain number of years or have a certain amount of history before they can have confidence in loaning you money. So a lot of times, many of the financial options that startup businesses have are very limited. So that's one dynamic, the money dilemma, and then the cost of traditional office space and how high it can be. So the book starts off providing a little bit of background about those things, and then it goes into what service office space is and how easy it can be for someone to use service office space. So the book was to close that knowledge gap and provide a relatively thorough perspective to help the reader to understand what service office space is, to close that knowledge gap. What I also observed is that as far as the types of books that are out there in the marketplace about service office space, the ones that I have seen have been from the perspective of the operator in terms of how you start a service office space or how you optimize it, but not necessarily from the user's perspective in terms of how they navigate all of the options in the marketplace. So the book speaks to the user from that perspective as well. So I think that it addresses two issues that I've observed in the marketplace. And after 6 years of seeing the same thing over and over again, I decided I have to do something about this. So the only option that I came up with was to write a book and put it in terms that people could easily refer to.
That's interesting, and you're absolutely right. And so it's kind of like if you see a need, fill it. Because a lot of times, I know exactly what you mean whenever I'm looking or searching a particular topic and it doesn't seem like I can find exactly what I'm looking for. And sometimes because it just is not out there, it's just not written. So for you to see that, and like I said, I'm almost sure not a whole lot of people know about that industry, that market, and maybe in the entrepreneur area, maybe they do. But I don't think your average person who may not deal in that area has a clue that you can actually, rent a professional looking space on an hourly basis, if you will. And so I'm quite sure whenever you started doing your research for printed material about that, you probably didn't come across much. And so that means your book stands out.
I would like to think that it does. Absolutely.
That's always the hope. Like, okay, well, you know what? If it's not there and I put it there. So now when folks go looking, when folks do what you did, they'll come across your book. And the title of that book is Kill the Rent, Grow the Biz. If you've just joined me, I hope you've been with me since 6, certainly since 7. My guest is LaTaunya Howard, and she is the founder of the Howard Corporate Center, LLC. And we're talking about here her business, a major focus, if not the most focus, is her flexible workspace business for small businesses. Now, many of you, I won't say the name of the coffee shop, but I'm sure if you go into many of the coffee shops, they have Wi-Fi now. They're very comfortable. You'll see folks sitting there with their laptops. Some of the folks are not just sitting there going on Facebook. Some of them are actually meeting there. That's their meeting place. And so what LaTaunya is offering is a professional setting where you can rent for the most part, in comparison, especially where she is, for a nominal fee, to have a professional workspace because, this is the whole thing, LaTaunya, you know this, and I know this because my original major, my undergrad major was business administration and marketing. But perception does become folks' reality. So back what we were talking about, like I said, folks around the world thought the concept library was this big building. It was a file cabinet. Now, because they didn't realize it was a file cabinet in headquarters, they didn't know any different. But now when somebody walks into your place, and like you said, you bring them into a coffee shop and they've talked to you on the telephone thinking they're going to, an office, and they get to a coffee shop, it could wreck that perception.
It absolutely can. Absolutely.
So, right, go ahead.
Yeah. People need to understand that. And one of the things I try to emphasize in the book is that when people fake it, and I like to use that term because I think it captures people's attention.
Right.
People think that even though you're meeting people in your home or out of a coffee shop, that you're not spending money on rent. It actually is costing you something. So people need to understand, just because you're not writing a check to a landlord, you're still paying in some way. It could be in a negative perception. Like I said earlier, you don't know how many people are not doing business with you because you don't have a corporate place to work.
Right.
You don't want to give people a reason to think that you're not legitimate and that you're not fly by night. So you want people to have confidence that you're going to be able to close the deal, you're going to be able to fulfill the requirements of the deal, and that you're going to be here tomorrow, 6 months from now, or next year. And it's not just a matter of service office space not only addresses the notion of having a physical place to work as an alternative to a coffee shop or your home office, but it also helps to overcome the issue of having a P.O. box and not having a real corporate address, because the way that some people may feel differently about you when they find out that you work out of a coffee shop.
Right.
They may have this negative perception when they see that your corporate address is a P.O. box.
That's
and correct. Service office as well.
And it's interesting that you went there because that's exactly what popped in my mind, because I have been seeing ads from the UPSs and the post office and other shipping companies of where they now present, if you will, the fake address. Where, you walk into their location and you pretend as if it's, but I mean, it really is all about the perception that you want folks to have. And you always want to appear professional. Actually, you always want to be professional. You don't want to just appear it. You want to be it. And the surroundings are a part of it. And you said they get a receptionist comes along with that as well. Even that makes a difference as to who answers the phone and how they answer it.
Exactly. Who warmly greets your clients and who immediately comforts them and offers them a cup of coffee. And that's another thing. Many of these service office spaces, including mine, provide complimentary beverages and snacks for you and your guests. So your guests can come in and enjoy a cup of coffee while they're waiting, or a cup of tea, or have some type of pastry. And that's an additional dollar that you can save versus working in a coffee shop, for example.
Right.
Because there was something just in the news back in April, I believe it was. Like you said, I won't say the name of the coffee shop, but there was a case where people went to a coffee shop to conduct business. There was an expectation for them to order some food. They didn't, and something happened.
Correct.
And that's the case with many coffee shops. Even though they don't necessarily say it, there's an expectation for you to order food while you're meeting in their space.
Correct.
So that costs more money. So don't think just because you're meeting in a coffee shop that you don't have to spend money. And if you're meeting someone in the coffee shop, and if you have a modicum of business etiquette, you'll buy something for yourself and for your guests.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah, I have to throw that out there. So it can really add up very quickly.
That's true. I'm laughing because you're right. If you have any sense whatsoever, if you're sitting in there, you better make that offer.
Exactly.
And because your client they won't say anything, but they may think as they walk out the door, wow, gee, they could have at least offered. I might have said no, but they could have at least offered. But you're absolutely right. So in terms of the types of businesses that become your clients, are they the normal, or what type of businesses use your type of service, or does it scan the gamut?
It really spans the entire spectrum. We have businesses who are startups who are brand new. They just registered with the state yesterday, and they're looking to have a place to meet clients right away. We also have governmental entities. We have provided support to governmental contracts at the state and federal level who, in cases where they had a project and they needed to have an office for their administrators for the duration of the project. So it's really an entire gamut from startups to the federal government and any place in between. I have clients who are from a number of different industries: finance, legal, counseling, you can name it. I believe that at some point in the 6-year period that we've been open, there probably aren't many industries that we haven't supported in one way or another. And my clientele is a very diverse clientele. I have folks who are actually headquartered in other parts of the country, but they use our location as a satellite location in order to expand their presence. And we also even have international clients who are looking to make a presence or have a presence in the United States. So it's really a full spectrum.
Wow. I'm thinking like you're talking about the shift, even in the hotels, in the hotel industry, a lot of them have shifted that way in terms of, services that they offer, the monthlies or the, half years or whatever they call it, wherever. It's almost like, you're living in your house. It's like somebody that's working off site. And so this, again, is that a shift in mindset, a shift in how we do business. And I guess, you got to be right. You got to be in that moment. You got to catch it, strike while the iron is hot, because that's kind of where we are. So, I mean, are there a lot of, or do you have a lot of competition in that area, or you kind of it?
No, there's definitely competition, and that's why I encourage people to search the marketplace, because there are a number of options that are out there. The subtitle to my book is 5 Simple Steps to Cut Costs, Attract More Clients, and Improve Your Bottom Line. And I talk about those 5 simple steps in the book to help people to navigate the marketplace, because if you don't necessarily know what you're looking for, it can be very overwhelming because there are so many options out there. One of the things that distinguishes us from our competition is, like you said, the experience that we offer, but also the diverse portfolio of services that we offer. We not only provide service office space in terms of the conference rooms, the meeting rooms, and the private offices, but as the business has continued, my vision for the business has expanded, and thus the services that we offer have expanded. So not only do I provide still the core competency or the core service of service office space, but we also have networking events that enable businesses to connect with one another. As you mentioned in the beginning, I recently began hosting a television show with the public TV station, which is another value that I can add to clients in terms of educational resources and then perhaps marketing exposure if they're a guest on the show. And I'm also a licensed real estate agent. So when clients ultimately outgrow the space, which would be a good thing for them, bittersweet for me because I'm losing a client, I can actually help them negotiate and secure a lease of their own. So we provide a wide range of value to the clients beyond surface office space, which is one of the things that distinguishes us from our competition. But when I talk about the 5 simple steps in the book, as well as what I call the 3 C's of service office space, which are credibility, convenience, and control, these are all parameters that I'm offering to help the reader to navigate the marketplace, cut through the competition, and find the solution that is best for them and what their needs are.
So you have the real estate as well. See, I see where everything dovetails. I see where everything connects. And that's, to me, I love that. I mean, for those that like to do just one thing and can stay one track, like LaTaunya said earlier, if you went down that path of go to school, get a job, and retire with the gold watch at 70 or 65, then God bless you. But for those that can expand and they have other things going on that seem to connect, I mean, to me really makes life interesting. So I really get what you're talking about with not doing anything for the soul, because I'm there. I call those type people. I didn't coin it, but because we're considered Renaissance people. You're like a Renaissance woman, Renaissance. You can do multiple things, but they all connect. I mean, because I'm listening here to the TV show, the book, the entrepreneur business, the real estate license. All of that connects.
Right. All to help small business owners, businesses in general, but especially small business owners.
Right.
Because as a small business owner, I want to help other business owners succeed. And it's truly the small businesses that are the backbone of our economy.
That's correct.
You mentioned the Disneys and the Amazons before. It's great to be in that tax bracket, but at the end of the day, it's the small business owners that are driving this economy. So those are the ones who I want to help succeed.
Absolutely. And you said it earlier, something that we say on this show constantly in terms of making life better for others, helping others. And generally what happens is as you're making life better for others, you're making life better for yourself. Now, that's just the way I found it to be. Most people that really kind of understand that loop finds it. But then you have some that are just straight up selfish. They have a selfish agenda that's different. But being able to help somebody else, it's nothing like it.
That's absolutely correct, and I think that's what brings the most warmth to my heart in this business is just seeing other business owners succeed, seeing them close deals. That's the greatest joy that I get out of being a service office provider. And like you were saying earlier, I received the Renaissance woman label. Thank you very much for that. But when you're in business, and you might have experienced this yourself, and this is something that I'm offering to your listeners as a form of encouragement. When you take the step, and it can be scary, but when you take the step to open up a business or take the leap into entrepreneurship, you will be surprised at how many other opportunities will just find their way to you. I think all you have to do is take that one step and the universe will align itself around you.
Correct.
And that's part of the reason why I have so many different dimensions in my portfolio of services. Like I said, I started off with service office space, but as the business grew and I expanded my mind and just became open to opportunities, I realized that there were other ways that I can help small business owners. So all of those different facets of service that I provide are really just a result of me being open to the opportunities that were simply coming to me. And that's one of the advantages of entrepreneurship that I have found to be most exciting. And I didn't necessarily expect, Because when I opened in 2012, I thought I would just be doing service office space for however long I did it, not necessarily adding other points of value to the client and finding other ways to help them. So that's something that's especially exciting about entrepreneurship. So just be open to the opportunities that come to you once you take that small step forward. So many things will come to you in just a form of abundance that you can't even imagine.
I know that's right. And in terms of what you were just describing, you started out with one thing, but as you got further and further into it, you started to come up with different concepts and ideas, and it was almost like really actually what you're doing was you're distinguishing yourself as your differentiator. All right, this is what differentiates me from others who are in this business. And I would think that would be fun because that's kind of like, okay, you know what, how can I be different from them that would be appealing and attractive for somebody else? I mean, that's kind of like that's the whole magic of the thing. Is like, this is my own business. I can run it how I want. I'm not working for somebody else per se. And right. I get to put my creativity in it. And if my creativity is the differentiator, then that works to your advantage.
That's absolutely correct. And it's now, I don't, you know, just as I'm sure many other people know, that entrepreneurship and being a business owner isn't always fun.
Correct.
There are times when you're going to wonder why exactly this.
Correct.
But, you know, even as with all of the challenges that I've had along this 6-year journey so far and the challenges that I know that are still to come, I would never go back. You know, I would never give any of it up. You know, if I had to decide today to go back to the W-2 world or continue on this bumpy road sometimes that I'm on right now, I will still continue on this path because you just don't know what awaits you when you see all of the doors that entrepreneurship has opened for you. But I think more importantly, the capabilities that you've learned about yourself that right. I think only entrepreneurship can reveal, I think that propels you to keep moving forward. I didn't know that I had the level of creativity, certainly entrepreneurial creativity, that I've been able to tap into during these last 6 years. When you're a W-2, you're pretty much in a box in terms right. of what you do. And sometimes, and I'm sure you can relate to this, if people see that you're too creative or you're too good, they try to shut you down.
That's right.
Because we can't have you looking better than the boss now. We can't do that.
That's right.
It's unfortunate, but you're really stunted in some cases as far as what your creativity and what your potential is. And entrepreneurship is just an expansive area for you to tap into all of those capabilities that you may not even know that you have.
I mean, just what you were saying earlier in terms of, okay, whenever you've outgrown the temporary space, I can now help you get a permanent space. I mean, that's like, you can't beat that.
Exactly. I can help negotiate a deal, make sure you're not paying too much rent, make sure you have good terms. Exactly. And like I said before, it's bittersweet for me because I'm losing the client, but it's one of those things. It's like you want to see people grow and spread their wings and do well on their own. So it's ultimately a wonderful thing. And it's really just a joyous moment for me, once again, when I see someone close a deal or even when I help someone to sign a lease. Right. They're moving away from me, but they're spreading their wings. And I like to think, at least to a small extent, I help them to be able to do that.
No, you did help them. You did help them do it. And this is where I was getting ready to go next. With a setup like that, even though you're helping people move along to their next step, that word of mouth, I mean, you wouldn't be able to pay for that because they're going to now tell other folks, go with her, go with Miss Howard, go with LaTaunya, because, you know, if it wasn't for LaTaunya, I wouldn't be here. And, you know, she worked with me when I was there. And now that I'm at this level, she was the one. The word of mouth alone from that is priceless.
Right. Absolutely. But yeah, it's all about giving value. It's all about helping others. Like you said, some people do it for selfish reasons. They just want to collect as much money as they can. But to me, I count my success by the number of people I've helped, not the number of dollars that I've accumulated. Right.
And because you do that, the dollars will still accumulate. Because I am convinced people really don't get that loop.
Exactly.
Because it's kind of like if you go into it, this is what I was talking about a couple of minutes ago with the selfish piece. If you go into it from the standpoint of the agenda is I'm going to do this to get that, it won't happen for you. If the agenda is I'm going to be nice to somebody because I expect to get this back out of it, you got to be nice just because that's who you are. And because that's who you are and because what you do, then things come back to you in unexpected ways. That is absolutely correct. I wholeheartedly agree with that. I've seen it. I mean, I've seen people who, matter of fact, we are watching one who is allegedly leading us in the country who can't figure out why people do not like him. It's because he's constantly. Let me put my thinking cap on. You're right. He's constantly seeking this approval from people and then wondering why he's not getting it. It's because your motivation of going into it to begin with is offline. If you would just do what you do out of trying to really, truly make life better for somebody else, you really would be liked and everything that you're looking for. But because you're going into it from the standpoint of, well, I'll do this and they'll like me. Like, no, it's not working. It's not working. Exactly. And, you know, to a certain extent, that even applies with entrepreneurship in a slightly different way. But when you're on an entrepreneurial journey, and this is one of the many lessons that I've learned and continuing to learn, it's easy to get distracted by what other people are doing. Right. You know, whether they're competitors or just in a vertical market or a completely different market altogether. It's very easy to become a little unclear or confused about what you should do because of everything that you see other people doing. So what I would encourage your listeners to do, particularly if they're not already on an entrepreneurial journey, is just be very clear about what your why is. Right. One of my favorite quotes, and I don't know who it's attributed to, but the quote is, when the why is clear, the how is easy. And when you see people all on Facebook doing these types of things, or you see people in the news, you know, trying to draw attention to themselves like the alleged leaders you just referred to, it's easy to be swayed by that, at least to some extent, and to become a little bit unclear on whether you're on the right path when you see so many other people doing other things in a certain way. So I want to encourage people to just be clear about what their path is and what their why is, and stay focused. To some extent, you have to have the blinders on. You want to be aware of what's going on around you, but you don't want to be sucked into or distracted by what other people are doing on their journey, which may not ultimately lead to a positive place. So just be very clear about why you want to become an entrepreneur, who it is you want to help, and just stay focused on that, regardless of how bumpy it may be along the way. Just stay very clear and very focused on that. You're absolutely right. And I've seen the quote, and I'm not sure who said it either. I don't know if it was Simon Sinek or who, but I've seen the quote as well, because I know Simon did a whole book on that. I think the title of it was Why. The title of his book was Why. I don't know if it was him but I have seen the quote as well. And you're absolutely right. And as a matter of fact, a lot of the self-help, or I think they've changed the name, self-development, I think it is now, professional development, something development. But a lot of the self-help book, that's exactly what they tell you in terms of really understanding why you're doing what you're doing. And if you can nail that down, you're right. The rest of the steps or the how kind of falls into place. Interestingly enough, that brings me to what I was going to ask you about in terms of Nikki, because I've been doing a whole lot of work or research on this notion of being an influencer. And I've been reading a lot of books on that and a lot of articles on, because one of my goals is to become an influencer for whatever that is. And so you already are an influencer. I hope you know that you already are an influencer. That's my hope, but I just never know. But and where I'm going was like with Nikki Wood. She and I met some years ago, and I chased her down to get her on the show. I mean, a couple of at the time, I think she was working with Tom Joyner. I think she was still doing the Tom Joyner show at the time. Or she was doing something, I don't know, but her schedule was like really busy. And finally she agreed, and we had a wonderful time on the air, just like you and I are doing right now. And then since that time, every now and again, she'll send me an email saying, I have great people that I'm, great, please send them over. And all of them have been, when I told her, I said, you have carte blanche. But how did you and Nikki link up? How did you link up with Nikki Wood? Well, it's funny that you said link up, because it was through LinkedIn. Okay. As you know, Nikki is definitely an influencer. She's
all over social media, adding a lot of value to people from a business perspective. So a few months ago, I just happened to see one of her informational videos. She provides a lot of free information.
Correct.
Which I was very attracted to. And this particular was a very short clip, I think, probably no more than about 5 minutes. But I found the information that she provided to be very impactful in terms of how one can leverage the media to help them to achieve their business goals. So, and when I saw that video, I was at a point in my entrepreneurial journey where I said, I really need to begin leveraging the media more to get my message out more. I've had some media coverage locally. In fact, just about a couple of months ago, I was on the cover of a local periodical called The Laurel Leader.
All right.
But I needed to not only leverage the media more, but also know how to do it in terms of media training. So I think the video that she posted on LinkedIn answered some of the very questions that I was already mulling over in my mind. So I decided, wow, this young lady is providing a lot of good information. She obviously knows what she's talking about. She's been with the Tom Joyner Morning Show, and she has all of these other credentials. I'm going to reach out to her and just let her know that I'm interested in working with her, and that's how we connected.
Okay, yeah. See, I tell her and Ariva Martin, I said, you know what, I'm trying to get to where you are. I don't necessarily want to be you, but but I love what you all do. And the reason I say because both of them, like you just said, very credentialed, but they're very down to earth. And I found Nikki to be very down to earth. And matter of fact, I think I wrote a recommendation for her on LinkedIn yesterday or day before, the way I was saying it. They're consummate professionals, but very down to earth. I love that. Because I'm not necessarily starstruck. I just think people are people are people. I mean, I think the celebrities, if you will, they get paid more and are seen by more people. But beyond that, they're a person just like me and you. So
that's absolutely correct. I'm the same way. You learn what you can from them, good or bad, because celebrities make mistakes just like lay people. But yeah, they're flesh and blood just like you and I are.
That's exactly right. So every now and then, right. So like I told you, I've dealt with and been around, and there are different persons. There are those that really think, like the earth doesn't move unless they're moving around in it. Like, whoa, like, no. And I've had folks, if people ask me, if you had President Obama on your show, would you be nervous? No. And like, no, I mean, it really would not matter to me in terms of who, because the young lady that played Thelma on Good Times, Bernadette Stanis, she was my guest about a year or so ago. And folks were like, weren't you nervous talking to Thelma? I'm like, no. It's like I really was not. It's because I see her as a human being. And matter of fact, her story is extremely touching in terms of her mom having Alzheimer's. Folks struggle regardless of whether it's celebrity or not.
Exactly. I mean, and there were two recent examples of that. What was it, earlier? I guess it was in June when you had two high-profile people who both killed themselves.
Correct.
Kate Spade and thereafter Anthony Bourdain.
Correct.
So what's worse for them is that their struggles are often public.
Right.
So they have issues just like everyone else does. But yeah, I feel the same way that you do. It's certainly nice to have people who come from different aspects of society, because I think that's something that you can just learn from.
Right.
But as far as putting people on pedestals or revering them, absolutely not.
No, you're absolutely right. And in terms of Nikki with the accessing the media or leveraging the media, she's absolutely right. And that's why I'm glad you're on here with me this morning, because I do record the shows and I put them on my my YouTube channel. And anybody at that point can access it. They're archived. And whenever I send you the link, feel free to shoot it out to anybody you want to. Because once I send you the link, it's yours, whether it's the YouTube link or either the MP3 link. You share it on the website or wherever you want to send it out to. This interview you can take and do what you'd like with it. But by all means, yes, I'm with Nikki on leveraging the media locally as well. I mean, because the local piece where you are, by all means, is get on as many stations as you can down in that area. And you're in a real good area, that Washington, D.C. area. I mean, that's a wonderful area. That's just like up here in the New York metropolitan area. So, yeah, as many as you can get on, the publications, little or big shows. That was the other thing that I loved about Nikki and Ariva and some others, is like it didn't matter the size of the show per se, whether it was a smaller show or a larger show. The Areva Martin was on CNN that Monday, and she was my guest that Saturday morning. And I told her, I said, well, I was just watching you Monday night. She was like, yeah, so it's like access, you leverage that regardless of the size or the locality if you think it's good, because you never know, like my show this morning, where it may be somebody in New York who may be looking for something down in the Washington or the Maryland area.
Exactly. Yeah, you never know who's watching and you never know who's listening. So correct. I agree. No one or nothing is too small or too minuscule or too anything. Everything matters. It's just about getting your message out and helping people and educating people.
Correct. Which brings us to the point in the interview where I'm going to shut the mic off and you have the opportunity. I know we've kind of sort of been doing it all in interview, but this is the chance for you to promote everything about LaTaunya Howard that you'd like to share. The only thing you can't share is like the cost. I mean, I know we've been talking about, we've given example costs or whatever, but your actual fees, that's the only thing you can't talk, because they can negotiate and talk that with you when they contact you. But as far as contact information, book signings, what the business is, where it's located, websites, or anything that you'd like to share, folks getting in touch with you, I'm going to turn the mic off and you can do that now.
Okay, well, I just want to say thank you once again for having me on the show this morning. This has very much been an enlightening discussion. And if your listeners are interested in learning more, they can certainly go to my website, which is howardcorporate.com. That's all one word spelled out. And on that site, they can learn more about my service office space business, as well as see a fun animated trailer of my book, Kill the Rent, Grow Your Biz, 5 Simple Steps to Cut Costs, Attract More Clients, and Improve Your Bottom Line. The book is an Amazon bestseller, so it is available on Amazon as well as through my website. And once again, I just encourage your viewers to consider service office space as an option for their business, even if they already have an office space, or if they're not yet at a point where they think they can afford it. You might be surprised how service office space can fit into your budget and into your business goals. So once again, please visit howardcorporate.com to learn more. I'm also on social media, on Facebook at Howard Corporate Center, on LinkedIn as LaTaunya LD Howard, and on Twitter as Howard Corp. That's HOWARDCORP.
All right, LaTaunya. Well, I wish you absolutely nothing but the best. I wish you Godspeed, and I know as long as you continue to try to make life better for others, it's going to come full circle. So that, because you have the right mindset. So I know that's going to keep happening. But again, folks, the business is Howard Corporate Centered LLC. And like she said, if you're looking for flexible workspace, and that is kind of like the trend nowadays, because, folks things are expensive. Folks are trying to save where they can. And so if that's a place where you can lop off some expenses in terms of, some of these leases and high spaces, high office rents, certainly is something to look into. The book is Kill the Rent, Grow Your Biz. The author is LaTaunya Howard. LaTaunya, I thank you for rising early and for calling in early and for the conversation.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Same here. We'll be in touch, and I'll get those links out to you sometime during the week.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care. Tell Nikki I said hello.
I will certainly do that.
All right. Thank you.